This morning I'd like to share some progress that I've made with my carbonization technique. Uh, I've been dialing it in using this. This is carrot powder. I chose this specifically because of Robert Murray Smith and his carrot powder experiment because I wanted to be able to compare my results to his. So this is just carrot that has been dried and then powdered in a coffee grinder. Um, it turns out that it's really nice to be able to dry it in a dehydrator. It's much faster than just letting it dry, but even if you don't have one, you can just let it sit out. Um, and so that's the carrot powder that I've been using for my experiments and trying A, B, C to see what works the best. What I've found is that I can use good old normal table salt, the non-iodized version, table salt for uh, the microwave susceptor. That's the thing that gathers and concentrates the microwave energy. Robert Murray Smith used zinc chloride. I'm using the sodium chloride. The difference is the zinc chloride does have a lower melting point. That's a good thing because it gets the materials in close proximity as the microwave energy is applied. So following some suggestions on the comments, I tried something that's worked really well, and that is creating salt water, dissolving the salt. And so it's not the large clumpy crystals, instead it's dissolved in a solution, and then adding the carrot powder to that. That gives me that nice close proximity between the microwave susceptor and the material to be carbonized. So what I do is I take a good old mortar and pestle, and I put some salt in. I measure out the amount of salt that I'm using. For my purposes, I'm doing a 10-gram mixture, and I want half of that to be salt, so 5 grams of salt. And then I take a squeeze bottle filled with distilled water, and I just barely put in water, a tiny bit at a time, and I keep grinding and grinding and getting it until it's just barely dissolved, because the more water I put in, the more water I've got to take out. And so I'm really trying to limit the amount of water that I put in. So I grind it, make that all happen, and then I add in the measured amount of the mixture that I'm trying to carbonize. In this case, 5 grams of carrot powder. I then grind that up. Now I have a paste. And it's a fairly, as you grind it, it's a fairly thick paste. It's not a thin one, and the thicker the paste, the better. The drier the paste, the better. I then take that paste and I put it in a little cup. The reason is I want to dry this again, and I want to put it in the dehydrator to do that because that makes it a lot quicker. However, the dehydrator has these big open holes, and so I can't dry. It's harder to dry a powder in the dehydrator. Also, when this powder dries, it's very sticky because of the salt water. So I end up with this. I end up with a nice paste that is dry. After going through the dehydrator, it ends up with this. I put the paste all the way up the sides and try to spread it out and make it a nice thin layer, and then I end up with this. And again, this is very sticky to the sides, and so I can use a spoon or whatever, and you pry it off the sides to get your actual material that you're going to use. Okay, and the next step. So you take that material and grind it up again, make it into a nice powder again, and then it's ready for carbonization. Now, I've done lots of different trials with the carbonization because of things breaking and trying insulation and this and that, and I found what works the best for me is to lay down 3 ceramic tiles. Now these are just cheapy tiles from Home Depot. They're very cheap, like 50 cents each. And then a actual ceramic coffee mug. Be careful because some of them are clay. Make sure that it is really a ceramic mug, and it'll say like dishwasher and microwave safe. and then another little tile, a littler one, that I put on top just to control the heat. I've tried wrapping it with various insulation. I've tried the ceramic blanket insulation. It blocked too much of the microwave, and so that didn't work well for me. But I ended up with this little sandwich, put that in the microwave. Now, because the sodium is probably because the sodium is not as efficient as a microwave susceptor as the zinc chloride is, I end up doing it for 6 minutes instead of 4. No problem. Dial that in, and that worked out just fine. So now I have a nice carbonized powder, but it still has the salt in it. And so I take that and I run it through a coffee filter, and I get this nice, beautiful powder, beautiful carbonized powder, which I can then grind and make into an ink and apply to batteries and supercapacitors, which is the next step. So that's my procedure right now. I'm carbonizing using salt water and 6 minutes in the microwave with no extra shielding. I do let the microwave cool down in between each thing. I even take out the little glass tray in between each thing. But that's as I've dialed it in, that's the carbonization technique that I'm using right now, and it seems to be working pretty well. So that's my experience. You have to experiment on your own and get your own experience, what works for you with your equipment and your techniques and what you're trying to carbonize. But I just thought this might be helpful to share. Thank you, and have a great day. One thing that I didn't elaborate on, that I think is pretty self-evident, but I just want to make sure, is as I filter this, I'm actually running distilled water through it. That it's not just a dry filtering. I don't just put the powder in there and expect it magically to do it. I put distilled water through it. And one easy way to do that is actually to use a coffee machine. You get a nice hot water, you put the distilled water into the coffee machine, you get a nice hot water, and it goes through and takes care of dripping and everything else. That's one easy way to do it. You can use it, though, yourself with a squeeze bottle through into something that drips and contains it. I found that I can contain this in a little device that goes on top of a solo cup and drips into it. But you got to use the distilled water to filter the material, to wash out the salt. You want to wash out the salt, it doesn't just magically go through when you put it into a coffee filter. Thanks a lot.